Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this video for Fork This Life, written by Jinxes 2011. This video contains chapter 24, and as always I hope that you enjoy, and if you do please consider subscribing. Chapter 24, Skeletons everywhere. Ferdinand POV. With a scratching sound, the final line is marked upon the map. Scooping up a large piece of earth in her hands, Lily lays a new deceased cat within the shallow grave and sprinkles the earth over it. She looks up at us. I have the necromancer's location. The place doesn't have a name, but it is near the Empire's border to the west. Excellent! Exclaims Luck. We should make haste towards him, lest he moves or does further damage. I nod. Joe chews absently on a strand of wheat, seemingly uninterested. Indeed, but we should at least inquire at the churches we pass to see if there are any other paladins or priests available to assist us, Lily says. Gerald POV. We pass through several cities without any trouble from bandits and very little from the monsters. They were likely intimidated by the heavily armored paladins. Speaking of, they managed to persuade some of the other paladins and priests to join our motley troop. As we go along, some of them look sideways at Ferdinand, but more of them are looking strangely at his empty spot near us, where I assume Joe is occupying. In total, we have 5 paladins, 4 priests, and an adventurer, a weirdo, and a fork, against a single necromancer. Usually good odds, but then again, a necromancer is a one-man army. We finally arrive. Everything looks normal. A slight breeze tumbles petals through the air peacefully. The scene is so very different from the magical image most of them must have been holding, so much that some even mutters, "I was sure that this is the right place." He's got quite the compound underground by the looks of it. The entrance is hidden about 150 meters in front of you, and a tad to your left, I tell Ferdinand. But how can I say that without seeming suspicious, he asks. I must be rubbing off on him. He's starting to ask the right questions. Not sure, I reply honestly. At least some of them can detect lies, so if you just keep saying it, they should believe you. Ferdinand starts trying to tell everyone where the entrance is. They agree that they may as well start looking there and start walking over. The horses they leave tied to a lone tree. Mounts will only be a hindrance underground. Meanwhile, I take a closer look at the compound hidden base thing. Evil layer? The necromancer is, there. Oh, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good at all. Might want to hurry it up a bit. The necromancer's doing some sort of magical ritual thing. With a lot of corpses, I guess around 1,000. The rest of the rooms in his evil lair are completely empty. Not a sign of undead anywhere. Unless those lanterns are undead. Could be. A feeling of pressure on my handle brings my attention back to my body. Ferdinand is taking me out of his pack. You do know that if I can easily get myself out any time. And he's handing me over to Luck. Okay, what? Look, if you're having trouble with something, just use this fork, Luck. You're right, he didn't see that one coming. He goes on to clarify that Luck should throw me at an enemy. Luck is understandably confused, but puts me away in a pouch on his belt nonetheless. That sneaky little... He knows that if I try to do anything here, I'll expose myself. Fine, just remember that if you get split up from Luck, I won't be able to help you. I warn him. I know. Raising holy symbols, the priests begin cast blessings upon everyone, me excepting, obviously. Ferdinand says that they have raised both his physical and mental stats by 5, as well as granting him some resistance to death energy, poison, and rot. Not bad. We reach the entrance and Luck draws his sword. He jabs it into the ground, piercing through into an empty space below. Nodding to himself, he starts slicing at an impressive speed, the first piece starting to fall just as he completes the last cut. Around us, the earth begins to bulge. Rather than a single massive distortion, there are hundreds upon hundreds of small bulges starting to break the earth around them. They are large, perhaps the size of a large ball, or a head. Skulls start to surface all around them, skeletal hands pulling themselves free of the shadowy graves to reveal a horde of skeletons. Soil tickles from between empty ribs and hanging jaws, and a few stubborn flowers cling to some of the skeletons' pale domes. 3 of the priests raise their arms in prayer and call out, "Holy Sanctuary!" A softly glowing hemisphere expands from the position until it encompasses the entire group. Half a beat later, the last priest raises his arms and calls out, "Holy Sanctuary!" in an oddly high-pitched voice, causing the sphere's glow to get slightly brighter. As the first skeletons step foot into the sphere's radium, the dark flames behind their eyes dim considerably, and their movements slow to a standstill. It takes practically no effort for the paladins to cut them down. Fear fills the priest's eyes as they recognize the distinctive twanging sound from the rear of the horde. The holy sanctuary repels the undead. It has no effect against ranged attacks. One of the paladins raises his shield and shouting lowly, "Divine Barrier!" The edge of the sanctuary surrounding the group turns solid, just in time to deflect a volley of arrows. Glancing off the shield, the otherwise deadly quarrels scatter ineffectively into the horde, doing practically nothing to the skeletal undead. Walking over towards the living, the skeletons begin to batter the barrier. Their attacks are unable to reach it, but the bright light slowly begins to dim. "I cannot hold this for long," exclaims the paladin, face pained as he strains to keep up the barrier in face of a constant assault. "Everyone, underground!" Lily shouts, leading the group down to the formerly hidden staircase itself. Luck follows close behind, warily looking around in case any further ambushes. Next is Ferdinand and Joe, and then the 4 priests, the sanctuary slowly fading behind them, leaving only the barrier itself. The other 2 paladins, and finally the paladin that was holding up the barrier. Lit only by the ominously glowing skulls and surrounding all of the sides by the dark earth, the group descends into the stone stairs in silence until the paladin at the rear groans, "They breached my barrier!" Nobody replies, but their speed increases and their faces tense slightly. Reaching a set of doors, they open them and enter an empty room with a passageway in each direction. "Which way do we go now?" someone asks, looking down the nearly identical corridors. "Right," says Ferdinand hesitantly. A few people look at him suspiciously, but Lily just shrugs. "You were right the last time. That said, some of us should stay behind to hold the undead off here. Marco, Alex, Ferdinand, and Joe, you 4 should be able to fend them off using the doorway as a choke point." Ferdinand and the barrier paladin and a pale-looking priest nod, while Joe just shrugs. Turning, Lily looks solemnly into the dim tunnel and moves quickly into it, followed closely by Luck and the remaining paladins and priests. They soon vanish into the sight and hearing. Alex the priest nervously runs his tongue along his lips and moistens them. "So, I believe, in times like this, introductions are in order." He glances up the staircase, face paling further as he sees the veritable sea of bones nearly at the bottom. "I, am Alex, the priest, obviously." He fingers the holy symbol hanging from the chain on his neck. Marco glances at him before striding to the door, readying his sword and shield. "Marco, son of Marcus, I follow Ordal, god of the shield." His voice smiles smoothly into the room, clear and strong. Ferdinand, already at the door, braces himself against it and facing overwhelming odds. "Ferdinand, adventurer," he says, loud enough to be heard over the thundering din of cracking bones. "Joe," says Joe, sticking his arm up cheerfully. "Well, nice to meet you, Marco, Ferdinand, and Joe," Alex gulps. I hope this won't be our last meeting." "It will not," states Marco, bashing the head of an approaching skeleton with his shield. "We do not need to defeat them, only to hold them off until the others defeat the necromancer. This is a simple task. Long and tiresome, yes, but simple. Alex nods worriedly, raising his holy symbol. Holy sanctuary, he mutters, causing a dimly glowing hemisphere to appear in the doorway, encompassing Marco and Ferdinand, as well as a few of the skeletons nearby. It won't be as effective as the one earlier, but I should be able to hold it there for a while, because it's smaller. Alex finishes lamely. Ferdinand and Marco make no response, now entirely concentrating on holding back the skeleton horde. Seeing that the two of them appear to be having a little difficulty at the early point, Alex glances idly around, spotting Joe comfortably reclining against the wall and watching the combat. He frowns. You aren't going to do anything, he asks. Joe turns his head to face him. Nah, I don't fight. Alex frowns deepens. Then why are you here in the first place? To watch things like this. Joe points to the two defending the doorway, small piles of bones beginning to pile up around them. To feel the tension of the fight, to taste the air. Ugh, this air is full of death energy. He spits onto the floor in disgust. Alex, already in a less than ideal state of mind, is completely unable to handle Joe's strangeness at this moment. I'll just concentrate on the fighting, he decides. Meanwhile, the other group is navigating the way through the tunnels. They pass several rooms, one filled with papers, some with various magical items, a room full of mirrors, giving them little more than a cursory glance. The paladins and priests hurry on by. No doubt the contents of the rooms are important, but right now finding and defeating the necromancer is top priority. The contents of the rooms won't be going anywhere, after all. There will be time to carefully search through everywhere here later. Are we sure this is the right way? Lily doesn't waste any time stopping. A second spent here is another second that the entrance has to be defended. Can you not feel the density of death energy increasing? This is the correct path, I'm sure of it. The paladin doesn't respond. Now that she mentions it, he can feel the death energy increasing. By no small degree either. He barely needs to use a detection skill to feel the malignant energy prickling against his skin, sapping at his stamina. All of them can feel that they are close. Turning another corner, they see the tunnel opening into a massive chamber, inside which their eyes widen in shock that quickly turns to anger as they take in the scene in front of them. Hundreds of dried-up bodies lie in piles in several circles around the room, channels leading from them into a massive stone basin in the floor. Both are empty, save the cloaked man standing at the center of the basin. "What manner of foul ritual is this?" mutters one of the priests involuntarily. The cloaked man turns, and one of the paladins shudder. The man's eyes are pitch black, and his face is a whitish color, as if completely devoid of blood. "Free at last!" it sighs, but its face shows no emotion. "Free from what? Your humanity," accuses Luck. Eyeing Luck coldly, the Lich states expressionlessly, "It doesn't matter." Its lack of tone makes it difficult to tell what it was referring to. "I'm in a good mood right now, so your deaths will be swift and painless." Its dark eyes glint malevolently. "You will all make excellent undead." Before anyone can make a move, it raises a dark staff and quickly chants, "By the dark contracts I call thee, mass summon undead." With a brief flash of light, the battalion of skeletons clad in rusty, corroded armor appear in front of the Lich. "Holy smite!" With a word, the holy light flies and strikes one of the skeletons. It falls to the ground with a clatter, vanquished with a single blow. Completely ignoring the skeletons, Luck leaps over them and attacks the Lich directly, wielding its staff in the startling display of both physical and martial prowess. The Lich parries Luck's attacks while retreating, chanting rapidly as it does so. "Damn soldiers, never stop, never falter. Death march." Chips fly away from the Lich's staff as he continues to parry Luck's blows, and it appears to be losing ground fast. But just as Luck is about to overwhelm the Lich, 3 of the undead surround him, and he is forced to switch his focus to them. Cladding his blade in a holy aura, Luck deftly slips away from their attacks. Shifting his footing, he twists sword silently, cutting through the air and beheading all 3 of the undead. With barely a pause in his movements, he again lunges at the Lich. "Strong, you aren't from around here. This would be an excellent opportunity to familiarize myself with my new body's peculiarities." The Lich steps frantically backwards and then looks up as he realizes something. "Death March! I almost forgot that I can use these spells on myself, now that I am too undead." Its movements quicken considerably, and it manages to break away from Luck, duck around the pile of bodies and slip into the midst of its undead soldiers. Grimacing, Luck prepares to cut his way through the Lich when a voice rings out over the din of clashing weapons. "Luck, they've managed to surround us. Some assistance would be appreciated." Before Lily finishes shouting, Luck is already slashing his way through the perimeter. "How did they manage to get around you?" he asks Lily, glancing around before resuming his assault on the skeletons. The priests appear unharmed, but the other paladins have traces of blood trickling down the unmarred skin, evidence of a wound that had recently been healed. "They suddenly sped up, caught us off guard," Lily explains, felling another skeleton with another bolt of holy magic. "Cover me for a bit." She jumps back and starts to chant, not waiting for a response. Shaking his head in resignation, Luck dashes off to decimate the rest of the skeletons surrounding them, while the others hold off a few in the front. Like a line of dominoes, set of armor fall to the ground one by one, subtle cuts evident in the thinner portions of the armor or straight through the metal when his or their positions made it inconvenient to target their weak points. Having eliminated the encirclement, Luck looks up, expecting to see a severely smaller group of skeletons now, guarding the Lich, but he could potentially charge straight through. Instead, he sees another group of skeletons appearing around the Lich. There is only 11 of them, but they appear considerably more formidable than the skeletons that there had been before. If the first group of skeletons and the Lich were soldiers, then these were generals, clad in suits of armor that were without exception covered in nicks and scratches, but are nevertheless in good condition. They have quite confidence in their bearing that is present only in veterans of many battles. Despite being undead, they almost feel alive as they simultaneously focus glares on the wary paladins and priests through their eye slits of their visors. Leaving the soldiers behind, the skeleton generals advance in unison, quickly splitting into 3 different groups. 1 which moves directly towards the paladins, and 2 that move off at an angle to attack their flanks. One of the paladins fires a holy bolt at the approaching skeletons. As it is about to hit, the skeleton tilts its body with contemptuous ease. The bolt flies into the group gap created, hitting one of the skeletal soldiers behind it. Eyeing the paladin in question mockingly, the skeletal general continues to advance unimpeded. Incensed, the paladin begins casting bolts repeatedly, but the skeleton general ducks and weaves around them effortlessly, and they end up smashing against the skeletons or a wall behind. Noticing that his efforts had only been a waste of mana, the paladin frowns in frustration and instead imbues holy magic into his sword. Behind him, the 3 priests hurriedly cast another holy sanctuary, the perimeter expanding encompass them all and the 4 paladins just as the skeletons are about to reach them. Grinding to a halt, the skeletal generals look warily at the slowly growing hemisphere. Instinct tells them that touching it will bring them harm, and yet within it there are enemies. One of them reaches out and dips a finger into it experimentally, whipping it out a moment later as it feels the holy magic purifying the death energy in its finger. Its eyes dim ever so slightly as the death energy within it redistributes itself to clad the finger once again. Another skeleton reaches out with its sword. Unlike the skeletons themselves, their armor and weaponry are not part of them, and thus the sword is unaffected by the holy magic. Then they see that their weapons can enter without anything happening. Their hesitation disappears, and they begin to attack again, although they are more careful not to let any part of their body enter within the radius of the spell. While all the paladins and priests are within the perimeter of the spell, the priests are unable to sustain too large a radius, and thus the skeletons are able to reach the paladins with their weapons. Of course, a smaller area also means the easier to defend, but the paladins are increasingly hard-pressed to defend themselves, especially when Lily is still chanting. Wounds begin to appear on the paladins' limbs despite their shields, the skeletons piercing their weapons into any and every hole in the defences. The only exception is Luck himself, fending off 3 and sometimes 4 at once without a single injury to show for thus far. Still, he appears to be fighting at the very limits of his abilities, eyes restlessly darting about, trying to see everything at once while his sword appears to have a life of its own, twisting and parrying relentlessly. If not for the sanctuary, and if not for the fact that Liddy and the priests were just outside of reach of the skeletons, the 7 would be likely to overwhelm them in moments under the undead onslaught. But the paladins and the priests are tiring, slowly running out of mana, and the skeleton generals are not. At this rate, it is only a matter of time before they run out of mana and fall. At this point, that, unbeknownst to each other because the noisy combat, both Lily and the Lich finish chanting, "Correct injustice, sever evil from this world. Sword of judgment," shouts Lily, raising her gauntlet. She curls her fingers, leaving a single index point at the Lich standing sheltered within the skeletons. "Wherever you step, death shall follow. Summon undead warlord," intones the Lich, lifting the splintered remains of his staff. The golden sword appears in the air in front of Lily's finger and begins to shoot towards the Lich at high speed. Noticing the situation, one of the skeletal generals throws himself in the path of the sword, but the sword pierces straight through into its armor, breaks through the bones behind it, and through the back with little reduction in speed or altering its course. Now, the only thing standing between it and the Lich are the remaining skeletal soldiers, which promptly pile themselves into a wall of bone and metal. That, too, has a thin hole cut straight through it. And that's when the undead warlord appears. End of chapter. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the links down below. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways listed down below. The easiest of which would be to share this channel, subscribe, like and comment, and all the other stuff that Google wants us to push. But anyways, until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.